Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, madam.
Yeah. So, welcome to the fifth day of AICTE-ISTE sponsored online refresh program on developing secure IoT application. I, Dr. Nilakshi Jain, on behalf of Shan and Kutch Engineering College, welcomes you all in the GTP program. Today, we are really honored to have with us Mr. Sankar Ghosh, who is Technology Solution Lead Accenture. Mr. Sankar Ghosh has multidisciplinary expertise in the field of technology consulting. He holds certification in leadership strategy and growth from Wharton University, certification in artificial intelligence from University of Washington, certification in AWS Cloud Practitioner from Amazon, and certification in SAP from SAP London. He has held important assignment in both Indian technology organization as well as in multinational technology consulting organization over a span of 26 years. He worked in many different and versatile roles, interacting closely with C-suites for Fortune 10 organizations, helping them to drive transformation in their organization. Sir, we are really honored to have you with us. Now, I want to hand over the stage to Mr. Sankar Ghosh, sir. So please start the session and kindly enlighten the participant with the kind knowledge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure for myself to be associated, with this program. And I'm sure through this program, I think most of the participants are getting benefited, and this is something very pertinent in today's world. So I'm thankful to the institute for conducting and organizing such session at this point of time. So I'm not sure my audio is visible. Sorry, I'm visible. My audio is clear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I visible? My video is
Yes,
clear. Okay, so
yes, sir.
unfortunately, I am not able to see for some reasons. I'm not sure why. The whole screen, but it might be kind of a technology compatibility issue. But let me quickly open it up, the session, and then I'll share my screen if that is okay.
Yes, yes, sir. Please.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, perfectly, sir. Your PPTs are displayed.
Okay. And what do you see on the screen at this point of time? Do you see the Internet of Things, that particular slide?
Yes, sir. First slide of your PPT.
Okay, so that is fantastic. So let me kind of get into the program details, what I intend to cover. But prior to that, of course, security is important, and security in the light of Internet of Things are more important. Organizations which have invested during last maybe couple of years, they are getting benefited. They are clearly having competitive edge, and they are ahead of their competitors in their particular industry. So let me very briefly talk about the structure of this particular session, what we are going to spend time on during next 90 minutes. And we are going to kind of talk about the Internet of Things, few basic things, just to kind of recapitulate. All of you are well aware of these things, but before getting into the core topic, I wanted to spend some time in terms of refreshing the basics. And then I'll introduce the threat landscape, because the topic is security primer. And if it is security, then it is very, very important in light of Internet of Things. So I would like to introduce that landscape. Then I would kind of gradually get into the product part of it, because of course it is all about IoT is all about product and platform. So I'll get into that particular topic, and then we'll talk about the security reference architecture, which is something which I would like to introduce. Let me briefly introduce myself. Of course, you heard my introduction. Currently, I'm with Accenture. I'm leading industry and innovation function globally for Accenture Technology. And I also kind of lead the technology solutions practice for entire Asia Pacific, Africa and Asia Pacific rather, AAPAC. And you have my coordinates on this particular screen. If you need to kind of reach out to me offline for any technology related matters, be it Internet of Things, be it the immersive technologies like extended reality or AR, VR, be it artificial intelligence or blockchain. Those are the things which kind of we work on, work day in day out with our clients. So happy to kind of get associated with anything which you might need in your particular endeavor related to these topics. So let me, before I get into this particular slide, let me ask a simple question. What is the most recent security incident? And that incident which is in my mind, it happened or it got published at least just earlier this week. So any kind of idea, like what the most recent security incident which happened, which got published globally this week. You can use probably you can use your question answer chat box to provide the name of the incident which you are aware. I'll give you 30 or 40 seconds so that you can actually just post what is there in your mind in terms of most recent security incident. You can actually narrate in few kind of words rather in one sentence, and then we can actually go ahead and talk about rest of the agenda. So I need help from the facilitators if something is coming in the chat box because I would not be able to see that.
Yes, sir, we are checking.
So anything is flowing in?
One person have told about the hacking of all the accounts, like the Twitter account, which happened. I think which happened approximately 1 month before.
Yeah, it's 1 month before, but something happened or got published. It was happening for a while. It got published this week. I'm talking precisely that particular. If anyone is aware, I'll give 10 seconds more and then I'll talk about it. I'll get back to the slide. Okay, anything else further? No, right?
No, sir.
Okay, so I think clearly this is what happens, right? We are not too conscious about security, and IoT is a topic which is very, very important from a security perspective, because whatever investment you are going to make, that can be that can be made or that can be victimized to do significant harm for your users, for the clients, for the organizations which are actually dependent on your product and platform. So therefore, it's very, very important that we get our consciousness around security before we get into IoT topic. Now, the incident which I was trying to talk about is the solar wind, right? That software which is used by network engineer, the system engineer, So essentially, system administrator rather. So essentially, that particular software which is used for IT monitoring by many organizations, including few governments. Earlier this week, it got published that U.S. Government of Department of Commerce within U.S. government, right? They discovered that SolarWinds software, right, got infiltrated, and the hackers they actually infiltrated the SolarWind development environment, and they embedded malware in their kind of patching, the periodic patching system, and that happened, almost 6 months back, or 9 months back rather, 8 months back, March precisely. And since then, wherever SolarWind kind of provided update, the patch, time to time patch, that malware got injected. And first time, US Department of Commerce, US government, they realized that they are infected, and now a detailed analysis which is going on, forensic analysis which is going on. So thousands of organizations would have been adversely impacted. Now, this is what happens, if the security is not in the heart and center of what we do, in light of any software development, and IoT is not an exception. Now, let me get into the topic in terms of big surge which is happening, and I think COVID-19, this pandemic during last 8 months, it has significantly accelerated the cloud adoption. And I think all the hyperscaler, the cloud kind of provider, be it Microsoft Azure, be it Amazon AWS, be it Alibaba, or be it Google, the Google Cloud Platform, I think all of them, they are actually seeing close to 30% plus growth, during last 1 year. Now, this growth, 30%, was almost, maybe half or little more than half, around 16-17% prior to that. So almost like, it is getting double, in just last 9 months trend, because more and more businesses, more and more organizations, be it university, we are actually doing some work for cloud adoption for University of South Africa, UNISA. But be it academic institutions, be it large business houses across all the industries, especially manufacturing, the service industry, the finance, the retail, most of the banks in Europe, public sectors, mostly around the world. But recently we have seen that public sectors in Australia and New Zealand, they're ahead of others. So essentially, and of course the consumer goods, retail, and media, right? Media houses. So they are significantly moving to cloud. They are to kind of not only to reduce their spend on data center, but reduce their time to market in terms of launching products and services, further accelerating the speed at which they can reach out to customer, and they can transform the customer experience by creating tangible and intangible value for them. So essentially, the cloud adoption also means that the IT, information technology world, and the operation technology world, which have been kind of working in very few organizations in an integrated manner, but otherwise it was kind of two parallel organizations in most of the large conglomerates around the world, wherein OT is embedded into the business and IT is more kind of horizontal, centralized. So now we see suddenly kind of a convergence. And what does it mean? This convergence is leading to significant boost in IoT, because OT is all about business. I mean, if you are running a manufacturing, or if that organization is into mining, or heavy equipment manufacturing, it might be natural resources, chemical, it might be steel, it might be automotive. Everywhere, I think when significant automations are happening, there are sensors which are being used, and then of course those sensors, right, when it is getting used, very importantly, that those are fueling the that Internet of Things, because ultimately those sensors are actually on a system, on a platform, and more cloud adoption. These platforms are actually becoming kind of a very common homogeneous kind of platform to be used by many organizations. So therefore, there's a platform concept, platform tier, and platform tier is more cloud service provider. I talked about MAG. There are very specific IoT device and network equipment provider, which are mostly the companies who are working with industrial equipment maker. Industrial equipment maker are more like General Electric, Toshiba, or Siemens, that kind of company. And then of course there are organizations like IBM, Accenture, who are actually into IT applications and integration field. So they are acting as integrators. So these are the kind of platform layer. And then of course, there are smart products, right, which are kind of foundation of IoT, which are kind of being used either in shopping cart, in automobiles, in cars, in home, in drone, in agricultural field, right, in healthcare. Like healthcare, the meditech industry is truly booming. There are multiple companies, including Olympus, J&J, who are spending a lot of money. And guess what? This money is not coming only from those pharma companies. This money is actually coming mostly from finance organizations, right? Fintech and insurance to some extent. So essentially, this IoT 32% compounded average growth rate is expected to kind of reach, this year 1.4 trillion kind of market. Now, let's kind of, with that mindset, right, it is a big surge in this particular area. What do we need to do? Let's kind of get into the next segment. So I would like you to use your mobile phone. You can use the QR code. If your mobile phone has got a kind of QR code scanner, using that barcode scanner, you can use this QR code. Or if you do not want to use your mobile phone, what you can do, you can actually get into www.menti.com and use the code which is written on this particular slide, 2315300. I repeat, 2315300. And once you get in, you will get these particular questions, which is already there on this slide. I want you to kind of provide a few answers, maximum 4 answers. Each answer should be kind of just 1 or 2 words, no more than that. I give you 1 minute, and then I'll come back in terms of what this collective intellect, collective brainstorming is leading to. So this is a simple basic thing to kind of get warmed up. Let's get to answer this. You have got 1 minute from now. So I would request facilitator, if you can also monitor if anything is coming, any question is coming, anyone is finding it difficult, if they're asking for help in the Q&A box. Otherwise, I'll very soon, within 1 minute, I'll get into the result screen in terms of what answers participants are providing. I'll stop here. Sorry, I'm getting a call from Smita. Not sure. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think that you
we
are.
can hear it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let me see if there are what answers we are kind of getting, and people who are actually responding keep on providing you answers. Who have not responded, request you to kind of provide you answers. We see some of the answers which have come in: humidity, temperature, pressure, moisture.
Yeah.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
What do you see on the screen?
So the question right now,
But
the
you are
QR
not able to
code,
see the answers,
not
right?
answers. No, not answers, sir.
Not answers. Okay.
No, no, sir.
Fine.
Yeah.
Let me reshare. What do you see now?
Yes, sir. We can see the answers.
Okay. So far I have received 4 answers. Is that all? Any other kind of responses from anyone? No?
Gauge cells can be one.
Sorry?
Gauge sensor. Sensor.
Your voice is not very clear.
Optical.
Uh,
So gauge sensor or infrared sensor.
Infrared sensors, correct. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. So it can be many, right? It can be image sensor, which is widely used in many IoT field, right? What you see, the video tracking system in the public places, right? That uses image. It can be distance. It can be, acoustic. Temperature is someone already said. It can be weight. Right, it is very widely used, the weight sensors, especially for all the logistics department of large warehouses, including the manufacturing plant. The flooding sensors are well used in oil rigs, to ensure that okay, there is no flooding, because flooding can actually clog the natural gas well. So a heartbeat sensor, humidity is another thing, smoke is widely used. The soil moisture is getting widely used in agriculture. Illumination sensor is getting used almost in every household, every the public places where the automatically the electric switches are actually getting activated using illumination sensors. Motion sensor, biometric, altitude. I think there are multiple examples for this particular thing. But I think let me come back. I just wanted to kind of have some brainstorming around this. So let me come back to the main topic. Let me get back to again the main screen, right? And I'll take you to the specific PowerPoint which we are discussing. So are you able to see the PowerPoint now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so very quickly, so sensors is one important element, and then the next element is actuators, right? Because sensor is what? Sensor is actually kind of taking measurement of certain physical phenomena and converting that to a digital, value. But you need some element within your IoT network which would be able to transform that digital value to a physical action. So essentially, That is what the job of an actuator. An actuator is an element that exactly does that, what I said. And this is very important part within your IoT system, right? Now, once that happens, then of course, what we talked about, one sensor transmitting the physical measurement um, to a digital value, and actuator converting that digital value to a physical action. But if there are hundreds of sensors, which is normally the case, Internet of Things, right? It's a cyber physical ecosystem of interconnected sensors, right? Now, the moment the interconnected sensor and actuators, right? Not only sensors are connected, but sensors and actuators all are connected. The moment this connected concept is coming in, obviously you need connections, and connections can be wired, it can be wireless, things of this. Sometimes it is provided, all the connection is provided by the same vendor. If the sensors and actuators are using the same technology, right? And then it is simple, you can use your personal area network, right? Some of you might be creating IoT devices and experimenting that in your home, leveraging your personal area network, or it can be LAN as well. And when it becomes complex, right? The technology is no more one single vendor, but multiple different vendor. What happens normally in the plant? Then IoT bridge is required, and IoT bridge is the communication element, right? That allow the interoperability, right? Across various technologies and protocols. Now, of course, the moment I said protocols means when several suppliers would be building this technology, they need to ensure comply with some sort of standardization, the protocol, and that protocols are nothing but that standardized layer of communication, the way things would be built. And MQTT, the message queuing telemetry transport, MQTT is a publish subscribe protocol, right? Used for machine to machine communications. There are other XML based like extensible messaging and presence protocol, XMPP, which is widely used for real-time communications, real-time messaging. For non-real-time, another XML-based, which is mostly used for web services, which is a simple object access protocol. When the large platforms need to interact with each other, they kind of use this particular protocol to kind of connect and interact. And then, of course, very recently, in the cloud, mainly the JSON, JavaScript object network, that particular language is being used apart from XML or HTTP, right? And the JSON mostly kind of uses the REST, which is representational state transfer communication protocol. So there are multiple different protocols which are kind of helping the communications to be more and more richer, more and more kind of data intensive, and real time need of the communications can be done, right? More and more robust communications systems which are coming up. But essentially you need to kind of follow one or other depending on the intent of that particular IoT system. Now, we talked about three things, like we talked about already sensor, actuator, then the communication protocol. Then ultimately, what you intend to do through that IoT is enabling an intelligent decision making, right? And that intelligent decision making is something which you are automating. That is the core purpose of the Internet of Things, so that human intervention goes down, things get automated, right? And that is where I think it is becoming more and more cost friendly, because otherwise human intervention requires a particular person to be deployed to achieve something, and that particular person means it is within that particular span. So suppose something which runs 24/7, you need 3 different shifts. Rather than that, if you kind of automate it with a single system, you can achieve 24/7. So essentially, automation has got a fantastic benefit in terms of achieving things, with less error, with less manpower, with less cost, but still making intelligent decision. Now, of course, I'm not going to kind of brain example. You are well aware of that. So moving on. So I think getting into the security threat landscape, right? So what are the issues? Issues of a secure IoT ecosystem is that, it is like, if you can see this particular cartoon, right, someone is welcoming a set of people, right, to their house, and that particular house is enabled with Alexa ordering system. People can give command, and if that ordering system is not foolproof in terms of security, it is just Alexa order 2 tons of creamed corn, right? And Alexa just going ahead and confirming the purchase. So essentially, this is too simplified version of the potential threat which can happen to a large system, but but very often this is a very simplified version of the root cause. So because intelligent decision making requires multiple different consideration from the security perspective, and some of those are actually highlighted here. Um, since IoT are kind of connected network of sensors and actuators, right? It has got a very large attacking surface, right? It is it is less human intensive because it is designed for automation, less human monitoring monitor way. The system might be very complex because the complex IoT system, especially in the manufacturing plant, which have invested into say DCA, SCADA for multiple different equipment manufacturer. For them, it is the whole ecosystem is very complex because each of those equipment manufacturer might have used their own protocol, own communication protocol, own security protocol, and that works fantastically, right, within that particular system. But the moment you are trying to connect with another set of suppliers, right, which are using different communication protocol, different security protocol, the ecosystem brings significant threat, from the security perspective. And then that specific aspect which I'm trying to explain is the security integration of that complex ecosystem. And very often the IoT products are used by the companies just from the cost perspective. Hey, I'm spending a lot of money. This should be achieved. The automation should be achieved, and I need to bring down my cost. That low cost also at times accelerates that thinking that okay, I can also compromise with security, but that low cost thing can also be an issue from the security perspective. And very often that lack of development, good best development practices in secure programming, not following the business what we call the business centric security DevOps features, BizTech DevOps, not following frequent patching of the security updates, and unclear liabilities, like because you as in an organization can have a specific end-to-end the support and supply license supply agreement with a specific vendor, but hardly that organization has got a service orchestration in place to kind of manage the security integration of multiple different suppliers. And because organization, they themselves kind of assume that responsibility, and very often that is not done well. So essentially those are the those are the issues which are leading to multiple security risks, right? One is nefarious activities and abuse. So malware, right, is what I provided, that SolarWind, this week's security incident, right, which infected Department of Commerce, US government, and thousands of organizations. It was a malware, right? So there can be targeted attacks, which is more of a distributed denial of services attack. We are going to talk about it. It might be counterfeit by malicious devices, because a device Manufacturing also needs to have certain integrity, a certain identification, so that customers who are buying, they can buy the right product rather than counterfeit products. So that counterfeit product devices can also lead into a security threat. So these are kind of one sort of security risk. Second thing is eavesdropping, what we call it, right? So it can be intercepted, it can be hijacked. The MITM or IoT communication protocol hijacking, those are the techniques through which it can happen. Even a temporary session can be hijacked, or it might be the entire network reconciliation system can be hijacked. So that is another kind of huge security risk. Outages can also kind of lead to security edges, because security lapses, because what happens that very often the security system is also kind of working without a backup, and outage can lead to security system failure, or failure of if the security is embedded to a device, and failure of the devices can actually pose a security system issue, because then the security, the way it was designed, is not going to working, and it can lead to either eavesdropping or a nefarious abuse of that whole system. And of course, it leads to IT assets data loss, the sensitive information leakage. It leads to malfunctioning of software vulnerabilities, third-party failure, right? And it can also be caused by natural disaster and environmental disaster, because in some of those cases, those security integration would be security system would be adversely impacted. And most importantly, which almost every time we kind of forego, the physical attacks, right? The device modification can happen, device destruction can happen. This is something which we do not design very often, especially in case of IoT. This is of immense importance. Like if you go to any Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google platform or Alibaba data center, the kind of physical security they maintain is excellent. Is one way it is very complex to hack, but it is very essential to kind of maintain that security integration. Now, what does it mean? It means that attacking the scenarios might be different. Attackers might attack the network links between controllers and actuators. That is a fundamental way to kind of capture a system. It might attack the sensors directly, modifying the values read by them, and therefore the intelligent decision making can go completely haywire. The threshold values and settings can be changed. So it can attack even actuators, modifying their normal settings. So therefore the decisions, the physical actions which they are designed for, that will malfunction. It might attack the administrative system of the IoT, or it might attack the protocol, the communication protocol I talked about, or it might attack the devices injecting wrong commands in the system console, or it can be a stepping stone attack as well, right? Wherein the step by step it will kind of gain the attacker actually takes control of a fundamental system, controlling system, and then step by step it actually gains more control. And then distributed, the denial of services is another attack which can actually bring down the system, right, through botnet. And power source manipulation and exploitation of vulnerabilities is other kind of important thing which can actually alter the data ratings. And ransomware is something more which is common these days. So I think there are kind of 10 different attacking scenarios which you need to kind of think through while designing your IoT system. So let's break the monotony of dialogue, or rather monologue, and let's kind of get to one more question. So again, the process is very similar. You can use your mobile phone to kind of read this barcode, which will take you to that particular website. You can see this question: what do you know about Mirai? in IoT context. Describe in single or couple of words. Or alternatively, you can go to a browser, www.menti.com, use the code 596801. Let me repeat, 596801, and respond to the specific answers, right, in single or couple of words. So I'll give you 1 minute to complete this. In case of any difficulty, just ping on the chat window. Again, I'm requesting the facilitator to kind of bring it up if there is any question, if someone needs any help. Hope some of you have started answering and you get to the screen without any difficulty. In case of any difficulty, you can ping in the chat window. So answers have started coming in, but not many. So keep your answers flowing. Whoever has got any idea, just keep your answers flowing. Okay, I think some answers are actually coming in. So let me switch my screen again so that we can see collectively what answers we are getting. Are you able to see the answers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Sir? Yes.
okay, there are kind of few answers already. I'll give last 10 seconds if anyone is still kind of trying to provide answer. Okay, so I think the time is over. So I think honest answer, no idea. That has been the center of all the answers, but the other answers which have come in: DDoS attack, botnet, zombies, malware. Okay, I think let me tell you that you are right. It is a DDoS attack, distributed denial of services attack. Botnet and zombies are synonymous. Botnet is nothing but it is a distributed network of bots. Right, that is what the botnet. Many people ask a question to me that is botnet illegal? The answer is no, botnets are not illegal, but it becomes illegal if the based on the purpose of that particular network. But I think this is all kind of right answers. It is also the malware, right? Because that is how it hacks. It is rather self-propagating malware. But let's look at what is it, right? So it happened. It is one of the worst cyber attack which happened almost 4 years back. I think October 2016, I believe. So there is a organization called DYN, right, which is nothing but which kind of provides the DNS services, right, and this actually this hacker, this got actually built in Netherlands by a 19-year-old kind of person, right? And in later kind of he sold it. Normally a botnet can be built with normally it kind of takes around about 200 to 700 million, sorry, 200 to $700 cost, right? And then he actually sold, that guy sold it on $36,000, right, to a set of people. And then they actually created this, they attacked, they created, they wrongfully misused that particular botnet to target all the IoT devices which are working on ARC. And ARC is a stripped down ARC processor. Some of you might know it's a stripped down version of Linux operating system. And if the default username and password combo is not changed, and I think many of you, many of us, we do not change the default username and password even for our home router, right? You get it and we start using it, it works, we feel happy. But that was the basic reason that it actually hacked in, because username and password, normally the default username passwords are actually put for hundreds, thousands of devices which are getting manufactured, right, in that particular supplier manufacturing. So it is easy to hack, and if that that kind of gets hacked, that is how it actually acquired a small node, right, that small device of that particular thing, a particular IoT network. And then it created as a bot, a zombie, right? And simultaneously it was trying to acquire multiple other bots on the same system, and then it created a connection, a network of bot zombies which can be remotely operated. And then these guys, they kind of started remotely operating those bot, bringing down the entire DIN DNS provider services on fine morning. And as a result, I think several organizations, tens of thousands of organizations, homes which were dependent on DNS services being provided by DIN, right, that got suddenly got brought down, right? So this is a malware. This is why it is called DDoS, because this is the way you can actually bring down a system, bring down a connected system to deny the services for which it is designed, and that's why it is called a distributed denial of services attack. So most of the cloud, or rather all kind of all kind of large hyperscaler of the cloud supplier, they kind of learn from that attack, and DDoS is one thing they monitor 24/7, right? So essentially that Mirai, if you ask me that the threat has gone, threat is still there. It depends on you whether you are taking care of this particular DDoS attack or not, but threat is still there. It can again attack with a very similar technique any other IoT system. So essentially I kind of created that security threat landscape, what it is. I would like to encourage you to ask questions. Please feel free to stop me if there are questions in the chat window. Any of the facilitator, you can actually stop me so that I can respond. So I just want to kind of put a logical break. We are halfway through. Is there any question which is there on the chat window which would be good for me to respond now?
Yes, sir, we have two questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So, can you please some light on firmware hijacking?
Sorry, light on what?
Firmware.
Firmware hijacking. Okay.
Yeah. Hijacking. Yeah.
Very good question. Excellent question. Whoever has kind of asked this. So, so firmware hijacking is, of course, something probably if you can hold on to this question, I'm going to cover that in a little later in as part of my topic. I would request you to hold on. Any other question?
So why the previous questions which you asked, the Mirai, right? MIRAI.
Yeah.
So someone has asked why it is known as Mirai malware.
Okay. So I think.
The name was Mirai. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think. Sorry, I am facing a little bit of network blip here. Maybe it is good to kind of switch off my video. Otherwise, I might get disconnected. But are you able to see my screen at least?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Essentially, Mirai, is a Japanese word, right? Essentially, it means the future. In Japanese, the future is actually is denoted by Mirai. Also, I think some of the other kind of other language systems, they say that miracle is also kind of indicated by the word Mirai. But I think the way the way they kind of the guy, the 19-year-old boy who used this system, he wanted to kind of discover that how remotely a controlled a set of bots can be controlled, and that can actually create a huge impact. His intent was good. He didn't want to kind of disrupt things, but when he sold it and that's why he kind of named this Mirai, because in his mind it is kind of miracle, right? But I think when he sold this to a set of people, right, who used it with bad intent, right? But I think Mirai was kind of given with that intent that he's discovering that how a miracle can happen through a remotely controlled bot. And remember that this was almost 5 or 6 years back. So at that point of time, this IoT was not kind of well known, right? So obviously, in his mind, it was still a miracle. But hope I answered that question. I'll move on. Is there any
Yes,
other
sir.
question?
Yes. No, sir.
Okay, so so let me kind of move on. So I think are you able to see my screen? The smart products come with many security challenges.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think it is very clear that today I think IoT is booming not because of the platform, because platform is there, right? Of course, platform through cloud adoption, platform adoption is going up. But I think very intelligent product, right, which erstwhile used to be small sensors, now those are actually getting packaged into a form of complex or very simple products. So that intelligent products are driving the IoT growth. Okay, and those intelligent products can be used for digital identity. Right, the perfect example of intelligent product is your if you're using the face recognition system either in your mobile or somewhere else, right? That is a very smart way to kind of identify and create digital identity, and that is widely adopted now by many financial organizations to do financial transaction, right? Because it's very secure. So, so that is truly a good example of a smart product. And I think there are several other examples, right? It can be communication protocol diversity, because today I think we talked about various protocols, but I think with REST, that particular API is actually doing wonders in terms of connecting multiple different disjointed, very diversified platform to kind of get connected through APIs, REST APIs, right? So communication protocol diversity is happening. That is also kind of booming this IoT world. Software patching. But I think one thing, if you see all these, whatever I'm talking about, that one way that is very smart, very intelligent, it is actually causing acceleration in the IoT world, but that is also kind of coming up with huge security challenges, right? Because software patching, an example, many organizations, they neglect it. They do not do it timely, and that is very, very important, because if a software patch is available today, and if you do not apply it today, if you apply it, after 1 week, this 1 week you are actually exposed to certain security threat, which that particular software application provider has already discovered, right? Already tested, already given to you, but it is that organization, the user is not very conscious. So software patching irregularity can pose a security challenge. Device cost restriction, I talked about the low cost thing, can pose a security challenge. Long device life expectations, right? Because what happens that these mobile devices are using multiple things, like it is using a communication protocol, it is using an operating system, it is using a security protocol, and at times some of those things are getting outdated. For even the device embedded programming logic is getting outdated, because what is happening, that logic, embedded programming logic might not have inbuilt security system, but right now, when that device was kind of built, that point of time it was not there, but today it is there. But obviously the device was sold with their expectation that it will work years after years, and that long device life expectations can also kind of lead to an user that it is working fine, why should I change, why should I upgrade? But that also leads to a security challenge. And then regulatory uncertainty is another thing, because internet is nothing but kind of connection of various previously disconnected domains, and not all domains are actually well protected, and then significantly blurring the border of traditional regulation, right? What traditional regulation will cover, because the evolving the landscape, the security landscape, the threat landscape which I talked about is fast evolving, and therefore to stay relevant, those regulatory also the guidelines, the rules need to be complied, to be updated, and at times it is not done. So essentially, other thing which also poses challenge, like GDPR kind of thing, right? Which is there in European Union, the privacy part of it, right? There is a significant responsibility for data controlling, data processing, and data acquiring. So data acquirer, data controller, and data processor, they have got certain obligations in terms of notifying how the data is getting used or changed, what are the impact assessments, how they're limiting the data transfer, how they're ensuring that in a proper appropriate encryption, pseudonyms, masking, they're provided. So some of those obligations are there, right? As a data giver, if my data is being used by some other kind of system supplier, like if I in India, why the other cannot be used by, there was a kind of ruling from the Supreme Court, the other cannot be used by a mobile phone operator because they didn't need it, but they were asking for it, right? So, but if they prove that, okay, as a data controller and processor, they are fulfilling those obligations, there is no harm. But most of those organizations, right, they are not, they could not confirm, because it costs a lot of investment to kind of get there to fulfill that obligation, and they can get away in a country like India, because even if they don't fulfill, right, your the common people data privacy is actually getting compromised, for which this processor controller, they are monetizing the data, but they have got no obligation, right? And you cannot execute, because as per the Indian information law, it's not much penalty provision is there, right? And even if it is there, right, it actually takes long time. Of course, during last couple of years, things have changed in the Information Act within India, but I think still, as compared to GDPR, it is much less stringent, much less severe. So essentially, that is also that privacy, the handling personal data, right, not fulfilling the obligation is also a challenge. And that is where I think most of the countries, they're now coming together to form something like GDPR, to help the consumer to have better awareness, and also kind of drive the data control and processor to kind of fulfill the obligations. Now, security as a fundamental, right? You can think about CIA. So CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So confidentiality is nothing but ability to maintain the confidential nature of the sensitive data, right? And it is nothing but only authorized entities, right, who are supposed to kind of use the data, they are having access. So that is the confidentiality part of it. Again, second thing is integrity. So integrity is nothing but ability to preserve the authenticity of the internet connection system data. So services or configuration. So how do you ensure that the person who are actually trying to access that particular person is authorized and there is an authentication system, right, is in place to ensure that integrity, right? And this integrity works fine when there is one system, but a large internet connected system where there are various kind of systems which are getting connected, there this integrity becomes a challenge, and therefore this to ensure unauthorized entities cannot kind of get access. That is very important design principle of any security system. And then third is availability, because ability to sustain operational continuity is the main thing why manufacturing organizations, right, they are actually spending money on IoT, right? And if you are designing a IoT system which is not fundamentally secure from the security design principle, then actually that fundamentally that can cause huge shutdown, right? So their right of that availability based on which they are trying to kind of spend money, that itself is fundamentally defeated, right? So therefore, it is essential to protect the availability of those assets, which are kind of connected to ICS. Now, all those, if all these three things are taken care of, then only your smart product, intelligent product, are actually leading to a safe and secure operation, right? So essentially, high level of safety comes from this high level of confidentiality, high level of integrity, high level of availability. Now let's get into the business aspect of IT, which is horizontal, which is kind of used by kind of enterprise system of the organization, like more like finance, HR, right, the accounting, right, those kind of processes, enterprise processes which are using IT. Most of the ERP, SAP or Oracle EBS, those are actually catering to that thing. We also say this system of record. And there is operational technology, which is the manufacturing part of the business, right? And that is operational technology, and that there, it is mostly controlled by business. So far, IT and OT, if it is not integrated properly, the security breach is bound to happen. So the convergence of IT and OT is very, very essential. But we need to fundamentally acknowledge the fact that IT is designed for very few time critical operations, right? It is very few safety critical operations. It is more kind of processes driven by human, because you can't imagine a finance of a kind of department is running without accountants, right? But you can imagine, and that is very normal, that if you go to a BMW or Mercedes, you will find that 90 plus services, 90+% of their services, manufacturing services, manufacturing steps are automated, right? So it is very natural to kind of visualize that things are automated in the operational world. But does that mean those are not critical? Yes, it is critical. Does that mean those are compromising safety? No, it is designed for safety critical operations. So it is designed for autonomous operations. So there is a fundamental difference in terms of outlook, in terms of design principle for IT and OT, and this convergence, right? That information confidentiality versus production availability and safety, that convergence needs to happen through that security design principle, that confidentiality, availability and integrity. Then only you can design a proper secure system. Now let me move on. That we talked about how what weaknesses are exploited. It can be out of data software, it might be poor physical security, it can be insufficient built-in security in the software itself, it can be lack of security awareness, right? It can be insecure communication because communication protocol is outdated, it can be poor access control because authentication is not happening, or it can be lack of security hygiene, like data is not getting encrypted. So it can there can be several weaknesses, right, which can be exploited. But as a good IoT engineer, right, we need to ensure that these weaknesses are completely plugged in. And so I talked about Mirai botnet in October 26. 150,000 IoT devices got captured, got got compromised, and connected vehicle remote network can be hacked in less than a minute, and all your kind of vehicle system, vehicle functionality, including applying brake, right, can be remotely done. So essentially, autonomous cars, this is a huge concern, right? Most of the organizations like be it the Mercedes or BMW or Volkswagen, most of the large consumers, they're actually spending millions of dollars on security while getting ready for autonomous car or connected car even. Medical devices vulnerability is immensely important because it can cost human lives. And central heating system, which is very simple thing, which is working in most part of the US, Europe, and even Middle East, right? That central heating system also, residential apartment, right? If it is not properly designed, it can cause havoc. It happened in Finland, right? It was impacted by a DDoS attack, and it actually created the central heating system to be out of service for a few days. And you can imagine, someone is staying in -8 degrees centigrade without heating system. It can lead to a disaster. So essentially, what do we need to ensure? We need to ensure the physical security. I talked about it, that how do we, wherever the devices are kept, especially the connection ports, the physical ports, right? The physical component of any particular network, those needs appropriate physical security, and then that part is often very neglected. So we definitely need to factor that in while actually devising a security system, because this is one important counseling which you need to provide to the consumer, whoever would be using that system. Now, let me introduce the security end-to-end security approach. What does it mean? That ultimately it would be used by consumer or public services, a government company or enterprises, right? They would be kind of using that system, and the system would be exposed to REST APIs, right? And that APIs, right, are actually connecting a platform, and that platform is actually having multiple data which is getting securely stored. In that platform, data is getting analyzed, and intelligent decision making is happening. Data is getting orchestrated at that layer, and that data is getting consumed by either the IoT system. IoT system might be industrial, right, or it might be consumer, right? All the smart cities are using consumer IoT, but a company like say BHP or Rio Tinto, right? They're using industrial IoT in their mines. Now, so this is a simple thing, right? So there are three tiers. Edge tier, there are three kind of tiers. Edge tiers. Edge tier is more where data is sampled, collected, and instrumented devices or smart products are kind of there. Then second tier is more cloud platform tier, which kind of ingests the data, stores, analyzes the data, and then finally where it is getting consumed, which is the business tier. Now, let's kind of talk about one by one, right, to understand what all the components which are there. Now, edge tier, if it is comprising of only the digital identity system to establish the identity of who are accessing. If it is a kind of having a temper prevention and detection process, like every kind of minute there are images which are getting taken of that particular system landscape, and then image is getting compared with the designed system image, and then that is actually driving the system should be operating or it should be shut down. So that is a tamper. There is a tamper prevention and detection system, imaging system. So if that kind of system is there, if a cryptography engine is there, so that data is getting encrypted, right, using cryptography. And someone asked that the firmware. Firmware is where the memory attestation is actually happening. So firmware, is where I think you would have you'd actually create a memory which is the base kind of image of that entire device, right? Which device needs to know, and device will compare at any point of time. If device gets refreshed, device gets restarted, it the moment it is getting restarted, part of the process is that it will compare with the memory, the image, right, the base image with which it is designed. And if that there is a mismatch, right, it will not allow the device to get operated or restarted, right? So that's the firmware. So we say firmware upgrade. So so if these four basic things are there, then it is we call it ultra constraint. Ultra constraint means it is severely constrained. It can work fine. It is not it is only isolated system, not connected with too many things. It can work fine, right? But it is very constrained embedded kind of security, and it's very basic security capabilities, right? Now, if you want to kind of update it to a edge constraint, what means that you need to have few things, that logging mechanism, logging of each and every access, logging of each and every activity, right? If any particular cloud, whether you are using AWS or Azure or Alibaba or Google Cloud Platform, you will find that there is a logging mechanism. It is actually logging each and every access. It is actually logging each and every transaction, right? And including the parameter who is changing, what is getting changed, right? Along with the timestamp. So that logging is the next step. Secure storage. The storage has to be secure, right? Because some amount of data it will need, right? And that data should be stored securely. The whole booting and rebooting, the restarting of the function should be secure, right? So that is the next step. Then execution environment, where various commands are getting executed, that operating system itself needs to be secure, right? And then time to time, that particular system, right, needs to get updated, and that update of the security, update of the development, that development environment needs to be secure, right? Whether you are using iPhone or any other kind of phone, smart intelligent phone, time to time you are getting security update, time to time you get that, okay, the operating system update. But they, as a company like Samsung or Apple or Google or Microsoft or Nokia, they follow that secure development tools technique. So while they are actually sending some upgrade to you in your phone to be installed, right, the execution environment is secure, and the development, the way they have developed, that is secure. And then obviously there has to be some sort of the host NGFW. I am going to try and talk about it in a while. So that host mechanism, right, needs to be there. So essentially, if all these components are there on top of the ultra constraint component, then you can actually talk about that is the edge constraint. So it is not highly secured, but edge constraint denotes devices which are more having computational power, more embedded security than ultra constraint. These are the edge constraint security system, right? And still I'm talking about edge tier, right? We talked about the edge tier is the bottommost fundamental tier, but I'm talking about edge tier. And when on top of all these things, you add the security monitoring system and security management system, right? So there, you kind of get to the high-end security system, and high-end security system therefore can actually be very important if it is there in the edge tier itself. So essentially, just before we can move on, host NGFW is nothing but the next generation firewall, right? So that should be part of the host where the entire kind of system is getting hosted. Now let's move on to the. So of course, I think we talked about it in the previous security management layer, security development tools, secure boot. Secure boot is nothing but ability to establish with confidence that the booted software image running on the device is the correct, unaltered, and the image that is expected. And when the match is kind of found, in the firmware, then obviously that is secured way of booting. And firmware and device memory also I talked about it. I think there was an excellent question someone asked, but I answered that question that at boot or runtime is not only at the time of starting or restarting booting, even at the runtime, time to time, this firmware attestation function, it ensures that firmware loaded right at boot is a valid and signed image. While a valid and signed image is very important, because image which is signed is loaded as the memory attestation system, right, for any particular kind of device, and it checks against that base and signed image, and when it finds that it is a valid and signed image, it continues. So it is kind of watchdog function, right? This firmware, the memory attestation is a watchdog function. It will ensure that the memory content exactly match with the originally executed firmware image, right? And when it happens, then it is absolutely fine. It actually prevents the devices from malicious image execution and runtime memory attack, right? So and of course, rest of the thing I kind of talked about it. Now let's move on to the next tier. So next tier is, of course, before I move on, edge tier, sometimes, obviously one important component is a software component. The difference between the ultra constraint and the edge constraint is actually the software layer, right? The software layer ensures a secure machine-to-machine services. It ensures the API security, right? It ensures the data security. It ensures the firmware over the air upgrade, like the firmware update are securely delivered to all devices across the ecosystem. So it ensures that. It ensures the sandboxing, right? Essentially it's a technique in the if the whole system, the whole IoT system is untrusted, how do you separate sandbox, right? Between what can and cannot be trusted. So that is also a part of a software kind of system, which is part of the edge constraint layer. And then it has got a signed application software. That is why it is called smart, right? So essentially, this software security is very important to kind of convert an ultra constraint system to ultra constraint IoT device to more edge constraint IoT device. So let me move on to the next tier, right, which is the cloud platform security, which is a platform layer. And of course, in the cloud platform security, we have, of course, the virtualization security, right? Apart from the physical security, the host storage integrity is virtualized. The whole configuration management is virtualized. The hypervisor, right? The machine on top of which the operating system on top of which a hypervisor layer, which is actually causing the virtualization of that particular host. That particular layer also there is a security layer, so that is virtualized. And then there is a virtualized platform monitoring, which I talked about, that security monitoring is a particular system for the high-end secure. So cloud platform security is a high-end secure system. And of course, it has got a network and endpoint security in the form of operating system and file integrity. The firewall, I talked about the host next generation firewall, NGFW. It has got a server and endpoint anti-malware system. It has got an operating system hardening kind of security system, patch management, and of course, IDS. Now, what is the integrated, the data security, intelligent data security part of it? Now, apart from virtualization and network, it has got application security inbuilt, right? Which is through API security, SDLC is the software development lifecycle, the development environment security. The security testing happens, the microservices, through which it gets opened to various different consumer. That has got a security layer. The container, right? The microservice container is a technology with which you can significantly improve the speed by virtualizing your whole environment in which you are building. The container security is important thing within application, and application firewall along with the runtime application self protection is very important. So apart from that, there are digital identity, which is more towards identity and access management. There's a data layer, data privacy and protection, and there is a cyber defense thing, right, which takes care of the vulnerability management, the threat intelligence, the threat prevention, the threat hunting, because you might be wondering that okay, everything is running fine, why a security breach happens on fine morning. To avoid that, threat hunting is an excellent system to kind of hunt that what kind of the potential threat which might cause a security breach. So these are all part of cyber defense, and all these are part and parcel of a cloud platform security. So that, and last layer, last tier, the topmost tier is the business tier, and business tier comprises of users, employees of any organization, endpoint, and the interfaces, right? The contractors which are deployed by a particular organization, and IoT and IIoT supply. The intelligent IoT is also picking up, so the suppliers are also part of the business users. So essentially, this is where I think it is very important, because users, despite having all those things, right, if users are not well aware, and if there is not a well kind of trained mechanism to drive that awareness and drive the security culture in an organization, users can become the weakest cyber security link. So that we need to kind of avoid third-party provider whenever we are actually working with any third-party provider who might be supplying services, a small component of devices. We need to have the right kind of SLA, and security should be embedded within that particular service level agreement. Very often we actually get focused on availability and other things as part of security, as part of service level agreement, but we tend to forget the security, the KPI as part of SLA. It is very important. User interface is the first line of defense, because it can protect your valuable assets. It prevents direct access of assets through significantly reducing the potential intentional or unintentional damage, right? So the user interface is very important to kind of get secured, and then on top of it, the business layer integration, right, should be carefully considered for all security compliance, whatever we talked about, along with the applicable laws and regulatory compliance. Like in health industry is a HIPAA, which is a regulatory compliance need. In GDPR is kind of any system getting used in any user, right? Irrespective of where the system is developed, where the system is hosted, right? If it is used by user coming from European Union, right? You need to comply with GDPR. So those kind of applicable laws and regulations, it needs to have the business layer integration from the security perspective. So hope I have answered the question. We have got 5 minutes left in the session. I will kind of now introduce the topic in terms of what does it mean, that end-to-end operational model. So essentially, if you can think about all the consumers, employees, IoT suppliers, customers, citizens, contractors, they are connecting to user interface either through cloud platform, and the cloud platform has inbuilt secure communication layer, the network, right, to connect to any the what we call edge tier. Edge tier is nothing but the bottommost tier. It might be it might be the industrial IoT or the consumer IoT, but edge tier might have devices which are only basic security feature enabled, which is ultra constrained, or it might be edge constrained, or it might be high end. So if it is hosted on cloud, like Azure, Amazon, like AWS or Google platform or Alibaba, normally it is they are having high end. Or if it is hosted, if it is connected to IoT gateway normally it is edge constrained. If the IoT gateway normally IoT bridges are they do not have a security monitoring. So essentially IoT gateway needs a security monitoring and security management, which is there in the cloud platform. So if you visualize this, this is how you need to connect, right? Then the whole architecture, what we call smart product security reference architecture, wherein you can imagine all the IoT devices are having those 10 to 12 layers of security, right? Then they are connected through the PAN or LAN or WAN. They embedded with a software system which is actually doing all those 5 things which we talked about, right? And then they are hosted on a cloud platform where all those security broker and the security layer for all those 6 elements, like cyber defense, data, digital, application, network, and virtualization layer security elements are there. And top of it, right, if the business integration, like security strategy, if it is working, security management and security monitoring system, it is working, which is taking care of regulatory compliance, the security and privacy design, threat modeling, security safety, security training and awareness, security policies, right? Then the whole digital system, digital business services, which is getting implemented through this different architecture, would be truly secure. And this is what we talk about, what we call about reference architecture, security reference architecture for any smart, intelligent IoT product. So I would kind of stop here. And if there is any final questions, I would like to take over to the facilitators if there are any questions in the chat window.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for such an informative session. First of all, I personally enjoyed it, loved it, because cybersecurity is my personal field of interest. And when it is connected to the IoT, it's a cherry on the cake, definitely. It was really so insight given by you. We have few questions from participants' side. One is, does each device have a unique identity that is inseparable from the hardware?
Yeah. Inseparable from the hardware, that is right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is the concern here? I mean, what is the question?
The question exactly, I think they want to ask that each IoT devices, whether they have any unique identity, which is not, related to the hardware inside it. Any other unique identity, any IoT device have?
Yeah, so I think I'll take back, is my screen visible yet?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think IoT device, if you look at this particular diagram, right, IoT device is the most fundamental layer, and there, of course, there would be some hardware component, right? But the way it needs to be visualized that, on top of that IoT devices or within that IoT devices, if we have this kind of basic layer embedded, right? That the digital identity system, the tamper prevention and detection system, cryptographic engine, and the firmware, the memory attestation. If those 4 components are there, then these IoT devices are kind of having basic security feature, right? But it is very limited, and it would work fine if that devices is working with very limited interconnected and kind of secured component, right? But the moment you are actually using the same IoT devices in a larger ecosystem, wherein too many different technologies are there, right, which is connected to internet, which is connected to various other supplier provided IoT devices, then you need to think about the edge constraint and high-end security system, right? So each of these things, high-end system or edge constraint or ultra constraint, each of these three security systems are for kind of IoT devices only. It varies from 8-bit to 64-bit security, but I think the thing is that we need to think beyond the hardware. We need to think beyond the way I kind of introduce the cloud aspect, right? We need to think whether we are having within the hardware, whether we are having beyond hardware, whether we are having the data security, whether we are having digital security, whether we are having application security, and the network, if it is on the network security, and if it is any component is virtualized, right? Whether the virtualization security, and then on top of it the cyber defense. So those 6 might not be needed for each and every IoT devices depending on its deployment and use, but depending on its deployment use, more complex, more this broad-based all-round security system you need to think about.
Yes, sir.
Any other
Thank
question?
you. Yes, sir. One question we have that at home we are using so many IoT devices which are connected to internet, like a smart TV and even now the smart lights and everything. How we can secure ourselves from threats, cyber attacks?
Yeah. So if we are using as a consumer, right? We need to ensure a few things. There we are actually using as a consumer. So first and foremost, wherever you are actually deploying it, or if you're using at home, you are using in your office, you are using at your workplace, or for a larger purpose, right, for community, you need to ensure that the IoT device comes with a basic security feature, right? If it's a simple device, right, the digital identity needs to happen, the tamper prevention needs to happen, cryptography needs to happen, firmware, memory attestation needs to happen. Now, some of these things are available in the feature, in the catalog of that particular IoT device, because definitely they will talk about these 4 different things. But if your use is beyond that, then obviously you need to think of other layer. But even your basic use, you need to ask where from you are actually procuring the IoT supplier, what is their outlook, how they're ensuring these basic 4 things. And if basic 4 things they're not able to explain, I think that is not a good device for you to consume or purchase, procure and consume, because then you are exposed in some or other way, security threat. And even I can give you example, right? In your router which you use at your home, there is a security. The moment you get into that the system to operate to system settings, right? There is a security element out there. So you need to ensure that that security element is properly configured, right? Otherwise, the kind of security threat which I talked about, you would be exposed to that for sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. At the outset, thank you for accepting our invitation and giving one token of appreciation from our information technology department. Kindly accept it, please. And thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope that this session has been useful, enriching for the participants, and I look forward, if there are further kind of connect any offline kind of question, feel free to kind of reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So kind of you. Thank you, sir. Dear participants, feedback link is posted on the chat box. So requested all to please fill once again. So we are going to have next session by Ms. Geeta Goswami, Principal Technical Officer, CDAC Pune. Looking to meet you all in the next session. Till then, thank you.